As promised, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jason Anderson, Kings beat writer for the Sacramento Bee. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
No, my pleasure, man. That is quite an introduction. Thank you.
Jason, let's start here. You've been putting out a lot of great work, as you always do, and for those who aren't subscribed to the Sacramento Bee, be sure to do that. Can you, let's start with what you put out over the weekend about after the OKC game where they got completely destroyed. Can you expand on what you wrote about and give us a look into the vibe of the Kings after that game? You wrote that De'Aaron seemed to have a bit of a longer goodbye to the attendees in the locker room. Was it pretty clear after that game that something was going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was something in the air. I waited around for quite a while to talk to De'Aaron. He was one of the last to leave the locker room, so over the course of, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, I kind of talked to some other players and kind of made my way around the locker room, and part of the story was that the vibes were just bad, and Trey Lyles talked about the energy. There was a bad energy in the room. Malik even admitted to that, as upbeat as Malik always is. Malik said, yeah, this might be the first time I would actually say I feel that way. So we go through all these conversations, and then De'Aaron, yeah, it definitely felt like the end. It was just it could have just been another night, if Fox were still here and the deadline passed and they decided to wait and figure this out later. You could just chalk it up as just, another night. But yeah, he took his time. He was in no hurry to leave. He made sure to thank like staffers and locker room attendants. And, he and I had a conversation and I shared some personal stuff with him. It did feel like something was coming. And that, we all kind of felt like it might be the last time that we were around each other that way.
Talking to Jason Anderson, who covers the Kings for the Sacramento Bee. Jason, you're with the team now. I saw you put out something about the shoot-around, and obviously with the trade not being fully finalized, no Zach LaVine. How would you say the atmosphere was at shoot-around today?
Yeah, it was, they let me in for the end of it. I wasn't there, throughout. The media availability comes kind of at the end where they're wrapping up. It was, I don't know, they said it was kind of business as usual. I talked to Malik, I talked to Domas. They said, it was kind of normal. We were, listening to music, and, they play their music, they shoot, they go through stuff. But it did seem to me to be a little more subdued. Okay. I think that, anytime you part ways with a player like De'Aaron, who's definitely one of the greats in franchise history, who's definitely part of the fabric of the community in Sacramento, who meant so much to the city, to the team, to so many of the fans. People are going to feel certain ways about that, and that certainly includes his coaches and his teammates. And so I do think I picked up on kind of a little bit of a subdued vibe there, and I think a lot of guys are maybe a little emotional today, whether they want to admit it or not.
Talking to Jason Anderson, who covers the Kings for the Sacramento Bee. Jason, were you surprised getting into the actual trade? So everything goes down last night. Were you surprised at what the Kings got back, or did you maybe have an idea of what they were going to get back?
No, this thing could have gone so many different ways. Depending on how many teams were involved and which teams were involved. So really it was hard to pin down like what it might be until the end where it started to get, it started to materialize. I'm surprised I guess I'm surprised that the Spurs didn't have to give up more. They really didn't give up much at all. Really, they didn't give up anything in terms of their core rotation guys or the best of the stockpile of draft picks they have. I'm a little surprised that the Kings couldn't have come away with a little more there. I think Levine's having an incredible year. He's a great player, having an incredible year. He's going to do some things for them and open up some things that even De'Aaron didn't do in terms of, the way he shoots the three, things like that. You're going to have Malik running the point, I assume, now, which is interesting, because Malik is, in my mind at least, and, I think everybody, he's been considered their best pick and roll ball handler, and in many ways their best playmaker for quite some time. So I think it's interesting, what they're going to look like going forward. And keep in mind the trade deadline hasn't come and gone yet. So, I think there is an expectation that there could be more coming. I think that there may be another shoe to drop here at some point between now and Thursday. So we'll see what they look like at that point. But I think that coming in is interesting. Again, I'm a little surprised the Kings weren't able to extract a little bit more in terms of draft capital, or maybe being able to get one of those young wings out of San Antonio. I guess to sum it up, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is it's a little surprising that San Antonio didn't have to give up a little bit more to get a player of De'Aaron's caliber.
Yeah, I mean, even with what the Bulls got back in return, and that's just a little bit confusing at where the Bulls go from there. So, the San Antonio Spurs, and I said this not to be disrespectful, but they almost won the trade by what they didn't have to give up as much as by what they got from the Sacramento Kings, talking to Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. Jason, you alluded to the Kings possibly not being done, and we saw Sean Cunningham, kind of report that the Kings are aggressively pursuing something else. I heard that the Kings initially wanted two pieces. Well, they got one in kind of the playmaker. The second piece was that from what I had heard, that wing that has eluded the Kings for all these years. Are you hearing anything about the Kings and what their next move could be, from maybe a center, the Valanciunas thing, to a wing situation? Are you hearing anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's, there are kind of some rumors and things out there. Nothing I feel comfortable reporting at this point. But I think we can say that with some of what they did here in terms of stockpiling some picks, right? I mean, 3 firsts and 3 seconds, and really we all know that it amounts to 2 firsts and 5 seconds. Excuse me, my math's wrong there. But before, because the Charlotte pick is not going to be a first round pick. That's gonna convey as 2 seconds. But those seconds have some value, and the Kings have been a little hamstrung in recent times because they've given up so many of their seconds, and so many of their firsts have been tied up because of the Stepien rule and the Herter trade previously with Atlanta. So they kind of unlocked some things there, and for Valanciunas specifically. If he were to be someone they were to target, now you have a bunch of seconds you can go throw into a deal, and maybe go after him. If you're dealing with Brooklyn and they want firsts, and the Kings were a little bit tied up in how they could, facilitate that with their own first. Now they have a little bit more they can work with, and maybe they could still circle back on a Cam Johnson deal. So I do think that this opens up some possibilities for them, and I would expect them to continue to look at things like that might be able to add to the depth, add to the size, the length, give them some forward help, because they really haven't addressed that, and they need to. I mean, this is why we're here to begin with, is because they haven't addressed those things for a couple of years now, and they need to, and they still need to, and I think they'll definitely be looking at that between now and Thursday.
Jason, a couple more before we get you out of here. I guess the question is, what do you think, and we've been taking a ton of calls so far, what do you think De'Aaron Fox's legacy will be in Sacramento? A lot of people, you talk to someone and they say, well, he could have done more. And you talk to someone else and they say, well, the front office could have helped more. What do you think his legacy in Sacramento will be?
Look, I think he's one of the best players in franchise history. I think he's certainly he's up there with guys like Chris Webber as the best in the Sacramento era. He helped get this team back to the playoffs for the first time after 16 years, ending the longest playoff drought in NBA history. It's all Sacramento wanted. It's all Sacramento wanted for 16 years. Just bring winning basketball back to Sacramento. And Fox put in the time, the sweat, equity, and the love and his heart into doing that. And he toiled through in obscurity for 5 years before they finally broke through. And I was around him all those years, and I know how hard that was for him. But he stayed, and he kept working, and he made promises to people. He put out the Players Tribune video, years ago, and said, we're going to fight for you. And he did. I mean, the dude did. He's a warrior. I've seen him go out there hurt. I've seen him, limping around before a game. And I can remember one night on the road in Memphis, back really when him and Ja were kind of going like at it, and there were all these comparisons and it was real questionable whether Fox was going to play that night. And he went through his pregame and came off the floor and I looked at him and said, "You're going to go?" And he's, F yeah. Like,
right.
I won't use the word he used on your radio show, but you know what I'm saying here. And he just had that in him. And it was something not everybody always gets to see. There were sides of him not everybody always gets to see in terms of just how fierce a competitor and how driven he was. I think back to the time when, the Lakers, again, early in his career, there was a home game against the Lakers. And, oh, gosh, a lot of these stories I'm going to tell you involve profanity. So I hope you bear with me a second. But his comment after the game was like, he loves the atmosphere, but there are too many effing Laker fans here. Mm-hmm. And then another night in LA, they played the Clippers. I think it was Westbrook's debut. And the Kings beat them 176-175 in double OT in one of the great games in regular season history, certainly. And, somebody down there asked him a question about winning that game and doing it where, Westbrook makes his debut and this and that. And Fox says, well, are you asking about us or them? Because we don't care who's over there. Right. Like, it doesn't matter. And again, he dropped the F-bomb there. So, he had this fire in him and his game was, to me, so unique and special. I really enjoyed watching the guy play. I think we're all going to probably miss watching him play, the way he moves, the way he can get to his spots, the way, he could finish games. It was just, he really is a special talent. And I think he'll be remembered that way.
Jason Anderson, the Sacramento Bee. Thank you so much for joining us, Jason. Real quick, before we get you out of here, is the assumption Keon will start tonight? That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think probably so. I mean, I guess you go probably Monk, Keon, and then, DeRozan, Murray, Sabonis. Zach is not here. He's not going to be here from what I'm told. They have to get through physicals today, and there are 7 players involved in this trade. So, Zach also has been away from the Bulls for personal reasons for a couple of games because his wife had a baby. And so it's still not clear to me even if he'll be there Wednesday.
Right.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, I would assume Keon starts tonight.
Jason Anderson, go check out all of his work at the Sacramento Bee, who covers the Kings right there, out there in Minnesota with them right now. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We got to do this again soon.
Anytime, Allen. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks so much. That was Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. Great stuff from Jason this whole weekend, really giving us a look into what is going down during that road trip